My name is Aaron. I was 11 years old when my life ended. Not officially, not on paper, but inside. That night was supposed to be simple, a short trip, a small escape from routine. My parents called it a family break. I remember sitting in the back seat of the car, watching streetlights stretch into long yellow lines as we drove through the highway. My mother was talking about the hotel. My father was focused on the road, one hand on the wheel, the other resting calmly. I felt safe. That feeling lasted until the rain started. At first, it was light, then heavier. The road became slick, reflections dancing under the headlights. I don't remember the sound of the crash clearly. People always talk about loud explosions, metal screaming. For me, it was confusion. The car spun. The world tilted, then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was on the side of the road. I didn't know how I got there. My head hurt. My ears rang. The rain was cold against my face. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't listen. That was when I saw the car. It was twisted, unrecognizable, smoke rising slowly into the night air. I called out for my parents. No answer. I screamed. Nothing. Someone pulled me back, hands on my shoulders, voices shouting words I didn't understand. Sirens arrived. Lights flashed red and blue. Strangers surrounded me. I kept asking the same question. Where is my mom? Where is my dad? No one answered directly. At the hospital, they cleaned the blood from my face. They wrapped my arm. They gave me water I didn't drink. A doctor sat in front of me. His voice was calm, too calm. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't cry right away. I didn't understand what gone meant. I thought maybe my parents were in another room, maybe sleeping. Hours passed, then more. Finally, a nurse sat beside me and said the words slowly. They didn't survive. Something inside me shut down. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I just stared at the wall. The next question came soon after. What is your home address? I froze. I knew the house. I knew my room, but I couldn't remember the address. They asked for phone numbers, relatives' names, anyone who could take me home. My mind was blank. Everything my parents handled, they handled it all. Days passed. I stayed in a temporary shelter. Social workers came and went. They were kind, but distant. I overheard conversations. No immediate family. No documents. Child doesn't remember details. I became a problem that needed a solution. That was when he appeared. His name was Samuel. He wasn't loud. He wasn't emotional. He just listened. I didn't know why he was there. I didn't know why he looked at me the way he did. Not with pity. Not with curiosity. With responsibility. He spoke to the social worker quietly. Signed papers. Asked questions. Then he knelt in front of me. You don't know me, he said. But you won't be alone anymore. I didn't answer. I didn't trust anyone. That night, I went to his house. It wasn't big. It wasn't warm. But it was a roof. Life with Samuel wasn't easy. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't gentle either. There were rules. Schedules. Expectations. I went to public school. Wore second-hand clothes. Ate simple food. I worked early. After school, I cleaned stores. Delivered newspapers. Washed cars. When I complained once, Samuel looked at me and said something I never forgot. No one is coming to save you. That sentence hurt more than losing my parents, but it was also the truth. I failed many times. I fell behind in class. I got bullied. I learned how to stay quiet, how to observe, how to endure. At night, I thought about the accident, about the road, about the rain. I promised myself something. I didn't know how. I didn't know when, but I would build a life so strong that nothing could take it from me again. This was not a story of luck. This was a story of survival, and it had only just begun. The first thing I learned in Samuel's house was silence. Not the peaceful kind, the necessary kind. Samuel woke up every day at 5 in the morning. So did I. There were no alarms, no gentle reminders. If I was late, the day became harder. Breakfast was taught, not given. I learned how to boil eggs, how to wash dishes properly, how to fold clothes the same way every time. Samuel believed discipline was a form of care. He never said it out loud, but I understood it over time. School was not easier. I was the quiet kid, the one who didn't talk about parents, the one who never brought friends home. Kids asked questions. Where's your mom? Why don't you live with your real family? At first, I tried answering. Then I stopped. Silence was safer. I spent most of my time in the library. Books didn't ask questions. They didn't feel sorry for me. I discovered something important there. Stories had patterns. Lives had systems. Success was rarely accidental. I started watching people the way other kids watched games. Who worked harder? Who complained? Who survived quietly? At 12, I got my first real job. It wasn't legal, but it was necessary. I worked at a small grocery store after school, stocking shelves, cleaning floors. The owner paid me cash, less than he should have. I didn't argue. Money was freedom, even small amounts. Samuel took half of what I earned, for food, for rent, for bills, he said. I never questioned it. He wasn't wrong. By 14, I was working 3 small jobs, before school, after school, on weekends. My grades suffered at first, then improved. Pressure taught me focus. I stopped thinking about the accident every night, not because it stopped hurting, but because survival needed my attention. Sometimes, Samuel would sit across from me at dinner and ask one question. What did you learn today? Not, how was school? Not, are you okay? Just that. At first, my answers were simple. Math, work. Later, they became different. How people lie. How effort compounds. How weakness invites cruelty. He nodded. Never praised, never criticized. That was his way. At 16, I tried to quit school. I told Samuel I wanted to work full-time. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, no, you will finish, he said, even if it takes longer. Education is leverage. I didn't understand that word then, but I remembered it. That year, I was attacked behind the school. 3 boys, no reason, just opportunity. I didn't fight back well. I never had before. I came home bleeding. Samuel cleaned my face silently. Then he said something unexpected. Tomorrow, you learn to defend yourself. He signed me up for a local boxing gym. I hated it at first. Spine, sweat, failure. But boxing taught me something school never did. Control, not anger, not rage. Control. When to move forward, when to step back, when to wait. By 18, I was unrecognizable. Not stronger physically, stronger internally. I graduated high school late, but I graduated. No celebration, no photos. Just a handshake from Samuel. You did what you were supposed to do, he said. I moved out a month later. A small room, shared bathroom, cheap rent, freedom. I worked construction during the day, studied business books at night. I didn't go to college. I couldn't afford it, so I built my own education. Finance, logistics, negotiation. I watched how companies failed, how owners panicked, how systems collapsed under pressure. I noticed something others ignored. Most people work hard. Few people think strategically. At 22, I started my first small business. It failed. At 23, the second one failed too. I didn't panic. Failure felt familiar. By 25, I stopped telling people my story. It wasn't a weakness anymore. It was fuel. Samuel and I spoke rarely now, but when we did, it mattered. One night, I asked him something I had never asked before. Why did you take me in? He didn't answer immediately. Because someone once did the same for me, he said. That was all. I never asked again. By 30, my name began appearing in places it never had before. Small deals, quiet partnerships, calculated risks. I didn't chase attention. I built foundations. Every decision came from one memory. The night I lost everything. The day I realized no one was coming to save me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was prepared. And preparation, I learned, is the most dangerous form of revenge against life itself. By the time I turned 32, people stopped asking where I came from. They only cared where I was going. That was the strange thing about success. It erased curiosity. It replaced questions with assumptions. People assumed I had support. they assumed I had privilege. They assumed I had always been this way. I never corrected them. My first real breakthrough came quietly. A failing logistics company, poor management, good infrastructure. Everyone saw risk. I saw leverage. I invested everything I had. Money, reputation, sleep. For 2 years, I lived inside that company. Fixed systems, removed inefficiencies, fired people who didn't want to adapt. I became the man others feared but respected. When the company turned profitable, no one remembered how close it was to collapse. That was my pattern. I didn't build fast. I built strong. Success followed slowly, but it stayed. I bought my first house and stood alone in the empty living room. No celebration, no phone calls, just silence. The same silence that raised me. I hired people who reminded me of myself. Quiet, hungry, observant. I paid them fairly, demanded discipline, taught them how to think, not just work. Some stayed, some left. The ones who stayed became loyal, not to me, to the system. That was intentional. Around this time, memories returned in ways I didn't expect. The rain, the headlights, the road. I would wake up some nights with my heart racing, my mind back on that highway. I finally requested the accident report. I had avoided it for years. Reading it felt like reading someone else's life. Dates, coordinates, weather conditions, 2 fatalities, 1 survivor, my name. No further investigation, no unanswered questions. It should have brought closure. It didn't. Instead, it reminded me how fragile everything was. I started taking fewer risks physically and bigger ones strategically. Health, insurance, contingency plans. Control became my obsession, not over people, over outcomes. Samuel watched all of this from a distance. We met once a year for dinner. He listened more than he spoke. "You've done well," he said once. It wasn't praise. It was observation. I asked him if he ever regretted taking me in. He shook his head. "No," he said. "But you paid the price early." I understood what he meant. Some people suffer later. I suffered first. Relationships were difficult. I tried dating. I failed. Trust didn't come naturally. Intimacy felt like weakness. People wanted access to me, not understanding. I chose solitude more often than companionship. At 35, my companies merged under one name. Media attention followed. Interviews, panels, invitations. I declined most of them. Visibility creates vulnerability. I preferred power without recognition. That was when fate tested me again. A young employee approached me after work. He reminded me of myself at 11. Quiet, lost, holding something heavy inside. He didn't ask for help. He asked for advice. "How do you survive when life takes everything?" he asked. I looked at him for a long time. Then I gave him the only honest answer I had. "You don't survive," I said. "You rebuild." That night, I realized something. I had spent my entire life running from the boy I was. Now, I was ready to face him. I returned to the highway where the accident happened. No cameras, no ceremony, just me and the road. I stood there in the rain and felt nothing dramatic. No tears, no anger, just clarity. My parents didn't die so I could become bitter. They died, and I lived. That was the difference. I started a foundation quietly, helping children without guardians. No publicity, just systems, just structure. I didn't want gratitude. I wanted results. The boy I once was would never know my name, but he wouldn't be alone. By 40, I had more than money. I had stability, influence, choice, and yet something was missing. Not revenge, not justice, purpose. Success without meaning is just another form of emptiness. That was when I made the final decision to tell my story, not publicly, not loudly, but through action. The world didn't need another inspirational speech. It needed proof that pain could be transformed into structure, loss into leadership, silence into strength. I wasn't done yet. I was only beginning to understand why I survived. Success changed how the world treated me, but it didn't change how I saw the world. By 42, my companies operated across states. Logistics, manufacturing, infrastructure. Nothing glamorous, nothing loud, just systems that move silently and efficiently. Power doesn't announce itself. It waits. I returned to the city where everything began without anyone noticing. The hospital had been rebuilt. The roads widened, the highway repaved, but the air felt the same. I didn't come back looking for closure. I came back looking for truth. I requested old records under corporate research permissions, transportation data, weather archives, emergency response logs. Not because I suspected foul play, but because unanswered questions grow heavier with time. The accident was exactly what it had always been. A loss of control, a wet road, a moment. No villain, no conspiracy, just randomness. That realization was strangely freeing. My parents didn't die because of someone else's evil. They died because life doesn't negotiate. For the first time, I felt anger leave my body completely. Not replaced by happiness, replaced by resolve. I visited Samuel. He was older now, slower, still sharp. We sat on his porch as the sun went down. "You came back different," he said. "I stopped running," I replied. He nodded. "That's when you decide who you really are." I asked him if he ever thought about the night he brought me home. "Every day," he said, "but not with regret." We sat in silence, comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from shared history. Before I left, I handed him a folder. Inside were documents, ownership transfers, trust accounts. "I don't need this," he said. "You do," I replied, "so you can stop surviving." He didn't argue. That night, I stayed alone in a hotel overlooking the city. I watched traffic move like veins of light. So many lives crossing, colliding, continuing. I thought about the boy I was. Lost, silent, unclaimed. I thought about the man I became. Controlled, prepared, unattached, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for decades. What comes after survival? The answer didn't come immediately. It arrived slowly, through action. I expanded the foundation I had quietly built, created mentorship programs, education funds, trade apprenticeships, not charity, opportunity. Children without parents didn't need sympathy. They needed structure. I insisted on discipline, accountability, consistency. Some failed. Some resisted. A few succeeded. Those few changed everything. One evening, a young woman approached me after a program review. She had grown up in foster care, moved 12 times before she turned 18. "You didn't save me," she said. "You showed me how to save myself." That was the moment I understood. My story was never about loss. It was about transmission. Pain could be passed down as trauma or transformed into systems that prevented it. I chose the second. Media attention followed eventually, not from ambition, from scale. They wanted interviews, backstories, headlines. I gave them numbers instead. Outcomes, employment rates, education completion. Data is harder to romanticize, but impossible to ignore. People tried to label me inspiring, cold, relentless. None of it mattered. Labels are for those watching, not building. One night, I dreamed of my parents. They were younger than I remembered, smiling, unaware of the future. I didn't wake up sad. I woke up grateful. Grateful that loss had shaped me without destroying me. Grateful that survival had not been my final form. As my influence grew, so did responsibility. Every decision affected thousands. Jobs, families, lives. I felt the weight, but it didn't crush me. Pressure had been my first teacher. I began preparing successors, not heirs, leaders, people who understood that power without restraint creates damage. Samuel's words echoed in my mind. You paid the price early. He was right, but that price bought clarity. I no longer feared loss. I respected it. Loss teaches urgency, but meaning teaches direction. The boy who didn't know his home address had built something far larger than a house. He had built continuity, and continuity, I learned, is the only true revenge against chaos. I was no longer trying to prove anything, not to the world, not to the past. I was building forward, and the final chapter was approaching. I used to believe survival was the end of the story, that if you made it out alive, you had won. I was wrong. Survival is only the beginning. By the time I turned 50, my name existed in places I never visited. Boardrooms, Annual reports, quiet acknowledgments and speeches I never attended. I had built companies that ran without me, programs that worked without my presence, systems that didn't depend on my control. That was intentional. True strength is not being needed. One afternoon, I stood in a school gymnasium watching a group of children train for job interviews. They were nervous, uncertain, trying to appear confident. I recognized that look. After the session, a boy approached me. He was 11, the same age I was when everything ended. My parents died in an accident. He said, "I don't know what happens next." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes did. I knelt down in front of him. "You learn," I said. "You work. You fall. You get back up. And one day, you realize you're stronger than the thing that broke you." He nodded. Even if he didn't fully understand, that was enough. I didn't tell him my story. I didn't need to. Stories inspire. Structures protect. I had learned that the hard way. As the years passed, Samuel's health declined. I visited him often. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, he spoke softly. "You did more than I expected," he said. "I just followed what you taught me," I replied. He smiled. "No," he said. "You went further." A week later, Samuel passed away peacefully. At his small funeral, there were no headlines, no speeches, just people whose lives had been quietly redirected because of him. I stood there and understood something with painful clarity. Legacy is not what people say about you. It's what continues when you are gone. I returned to my hotel that night and opened an old folder. Inside were documents from decades ago. The accident report, the hospital intake form. A single line caught my attention. "Temporary guardian, Samuel Reed." That was it. No dramatic explanation. No heroic language. Just a fact. A choice made by one man that shaped generations. I closed the folder and finally let myself cry. Not from pain, from understanding. The revenge I once thought I needed had already happened. Life tried to erase me, and I responded by multiplying my impact. That was the revenge. Not against people, against chaos, against meaninglessness. In my final years of active leadership, I stepped back deliberately. I handed control to those I had trained, watched from a distance. They made mistakes. They learned. They grew. Exactly as intended. One last project remained. I returned to the highway one final time. Early morning. No rain. I placed a small plaque near the roadside. No names, just words. Someone survived here and chose to build. I didn't need closure anymore. I had become it. When people ask me now what my parents would think of me, I don't answer immediately. Then I say this: I hope they would see that their son did not let loss turn into bitterness. Because bitterness is easy. Building is hard. And I chose the harder path. I was once a child with no address, no future, no one waiting. Now, I leave behind doors that stay open, paths that exist because someone else once cleared one for me. This is not a story about tragedy. It is a story about continuity, about how one life, nearly erased, can echo forward in ways no accident can undo. I didn't win against fate. I outgrew it, and that, in the end, was enough.